All right, guys, let's talk about it. It's March 5th. Daddy has called, he has hung up, and we have two books on the way in October and in January. I am very excited about that, but I feel like there's certain things that I want to talk about, not just as like a fan of the series who likes to like critique the things in it, but as a writing person, like someone who aspires to be an author. Like I'm not an author, like I'm not an expert, but I'm also a creative writing major like Sarah. And some of the stuff I heard in this interview last night solidified and like it I understand now why ACOTAR has the issues with its writing that it does. From a world building perspective, Sarah talking about how she headlight wrote, I think it was the way that she said it, it was like headlight writing. She only writes the scenes like directly in front of her, and that's how she wrote ACOTAR 1. This makes sense for the first book of ACOTAR because you are operating within the Beauty and the Beast structure. There are certain plot points and certain highs and lows emotionally that you have to hit. Your writing is then supported by all that framework, and ACOTAR 1 is supported by all that framework, and I think that's why even people who like ACOTAR 1 the least will say that it's the most fey of the books. This is how I wrote my Neris fanfic. I had Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Silver Flames to work off of, and I knew what story beats to hit, what highs and lows to hit, the the general framework of Nesta. It maybe not so much Eris because Eris has been criminally underutilized at this point, but at least Nesta's journey in order for it to kind of resemble the book. Because my point of the fanfic was I'm not changing anything necessarily about Nesta's character development. Everything the things that are changing is the main ship in the story and how we get there. But Nesta's journey is the same. This is why pantsing that kind of worked. Like I didn't plan that. I didn't plan that much of the Neris fanfic because I had Akasif to fall back on if I ever ran out of ideas. I am working on the fanfic chapter, by the way. I'm so sorry. Just life is lifing right now. I'm sorry. This worked for me with my ACOTAR fanfic. It worked for Sarah with the first ACOTAR book. But once she started to step away from the Beauty and the Beast framework, her world building started to get shaky. And I think that that makes sense because she's headlight writing. She said Restand wasn't even planned, like as a concept, like when she was writing the first ACOTAR book. And then when she wrote the second ACOTAR book, Akamath, she was like, okay, like this is where we're going. And like she was like that wasn't intentional, and because like that wasn't intentional, she kind of had to twist her framework, her world building framework, in order to fit it. And this is why we have a lot of these world building inconsistencies that we do. That being said, I feel like we knew all this. Like Sarah J. Maas doesn't plan her writing. Breaking news: fork found in kitchen, water is wet, denial is a river in Egypt, details at 11. What really got me though, and the fact that this interview happened about 9 hours ago. It's about 7:30 in the morning as I'm recording this. I am still thinking about how Sarah needed her husband, her math major husband's help to write poetry. So, fun fact about me: during the pandemic, I was taking part in a lot of spoken word poetry slams online. It was a group based out of Texas. It was one of the highlights of my pandemic. Not that there were a lot of good things about the pandemic, but I had been a poet when I was younger. Like I was in the poetry ministry at church. Like I was deeply inundated in poetry growing up, and that helped me in like 2020 when the world was essentially ending. I would be very happy to share some of my poetry, but I'm afraid to open that document because the last time I did, there was some incredibly unhealed shit in there. So maybe not. So it is from that background of being a poet and learning how to write through poetry first that I was just absolutely schmeckledorfed when Sarah was like, I was fighting with my, college guidance counselor or like advisor or whatever, so she didn't have to take poetry because she'd never use it. And it leads me to a critique of Sarah's writing that I have never voiced on this app. I actually thought that it would be a little bit too nerdy and nitpicky to voice this on this app because I thought that this was just me. But now that she said it, I have to talk about it because I can't stop thinking about it. There are certain chunks of Sarah's writing where like the rhythm is off. Like Ember's bonus chapter is a really good example of this. And I remember this very clearly because part of my Naris fanfic, I have a bonus chapter which is also rewriting the Ember bonus and a couple of other points of House Flame and Shadow to fit Eris in there instead of Cassian. And I wanted to keep Ember standing up to Rhysand in it, so I left that portion of Sarah's writing in the fanfic, and I kind of like blended it in with like my inventions about Eris. Okay, fine. But then I was reading it over and I was like, these sentences are just like really short and choppy. Like the rhythm doesn't seem right. It like it's writing that claps on the ones and threes. And this explains everything about like the lack of rhythm in certain places in Sarah's writing because she never learned writing rhythm in poetry. Now, I am not saying that every piece of fiction needs to be an iambic pentameter or that everything like has to rhyme or like you necessarily need every writing technique in poetry to write your fiction. Like that's insane. Like I would never say that. But I think that this explains why there are parts of Sarah's writing that feel like they are not based in any kind of like writing fundamentals. Because like poetry is like writing fundamentals. Like poetry refines your pen, it sharpens your prose. Like even whether you're writing poetry or not. And again, I am not an expert in poetry. I'm not an expert in writing. Like I am not a published author. Sarah is. Like she could probably school me on some things. But I swear, I heard that and I was like, that explains so much. This honestly reminds me of that moment in the Taylor Swift, like, Eras Tour documentary, which I have thoughts about that, but I have no one to talk to about them. Taylor's learning the choreography, I think, for, like, the Torture Poets department or whatever. And she says something, and the choreographer says something about how Taylor can't learn choreography by counting to the beat. She has to time her movements to her lyrics. And this was talked about in the documentary. Like, this was, like, some, like, cute thing that Taylor does. Like, oh, like, she's such a genius. Like, she has to do it with just her lyrics, or else, like, she'll get confused. I was like, girly, you are a musician. It sounds like what you want to do is write poetry. Write poetry. She's good at it. She does not necessarily need to be a pop star that dances if she can't count to 8. You are a billionaire. You can't learn to count to 8? What the fuck? It changed. I'm still like a fan of her music, but I swear, like I heard glass breaking in the distance, and I was like, oh my god, like that's a nutty thing to just admit. Like, you're proud of it. Sarah said that thing about, oh, I never understood like poetry, and I needed my husband's help to work out the math of my poetry. I got taken right back to that moment with the Eras Tour where I was like, you are saying this out loud like it's cute and quirky. Girl, you don't have any rhythm. You don't have any writing rhythm. And like writing rhythm, even in fiction, matters. Like, you're not necessarily like in iambic pentameter, but like writing rhythm does matter. It does change how something is read. It changes, like, when, let's say that you're doing dialogue and you throw a little bit of prose and prose in there, a narration, it changes how you hear the dialogue in your head. These things matter. Like, I have thoughts about like the books being released. And I have thoughts about some of the other shit that she said about like the contents of her writing and like the stuff about Rhysand and the stuff about Tamlin. Oh, we're gonna get there. But I needed to get this one out of my system first, because this point right here about like the way that she writes, it explained so much for me. It opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. And I feel like I've never heard anyone talking about the rhythm of Sarah's writing when they are critiquing the ACOTAR books. The ACOTAR books in particular, because Throne of Glass and Crescent City don't necessarily have all these world building issues. So I don't see people like ragging on Throne of Glass and Crescent City that way. But ACOTAR, like, my God, like, this explains so much. Girl, rhythm learn to count to 8.